Good afternoon. What's going on, guys? What up? What up? Week is almost over. It's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. We got some Thursday night football tonight. Actually, the Miami Heat actually play tonight too. It's a good thing to think about. But what a day today. I think today actually went a lot more better than I expected in the broader market. I was kind of thinking that we would stay a little bit more flat to red just ahead of the PPI data. But a nice little attempted rally that we've had thus far today, seeing about 3 basis points up on SPY. So a beautiful day in which you had opportunities to get some nice scalps. I've been actually pointing towards the semis. We already knew that the AMAT play actually was a beautiful newsletter play on behalf of Tom. That was a beautiful one. But NVIDIA had itself a day today. That was actually one that was on my radar. Along with the semis, looking at AMD, of course, AMD a little bit more flat. That's been under a lot more selling pressure as of late. But that was just a beautiful day across the board. And Lobo, what's going on as I get into Lulu? Let's see what's going on with Lulu here. I know they actually had earnings. They were actually expecting it to pop, and that is a disgusting breakdown that you got right now. So not a whole lot in terms of much more downside. I will particularly say you do have some pretty meaningful support down towards 332, as you are literally sitting right there at that support, that 331, 330. As I spoke, it literally dropped yet again. If we were to break this 330 spot, as we're pretty much getting heavier into that selling pressure, but we do see a little bit of a reflexive bounce. I would particularly look to trade this down towards 311, particularly going for next week expiration. If we were to break down below 330, and we would see some more heavy selling pressure within the coming days. That will be my gist if you're really looking for a larger degree type of continuation to the downside. But that would be implying that we break down below 330, and then I would more so go out towards next week expiration to buy yourself time. If you're doing a 0 day tomorrow, good luck, but I wouldn't particularly expect this to pretty much trade down too much further. I would say if you're looking for a continuation, you'll likely get a little bit of a bounce at the open, but 324, 324 half looks to be some meaningful support. So if you're looking for the 0 day opportunity tomorrow, you look for any kind of meaningful bounce off of this, and then you trade it down towards 324. Obviously, it's quite volatile right now. Trading, I think between looking at this, it traded down to 330 and back up to 337, about a $7 range within less than about 2 minutes of me talking. So really volatile right now, but just looking at in terms of levels, 324 is the next level to the downside, and then 311 is below that. So those are the two respective levels to look at. As I would say, if it's gonna bounce, we saw it go as high as 337 so far. I would particularly look for this to trade back up towards 341 if we were to see any kind of further relief between this evening and then also going into tomorrow on the back end of analyst ratings. All right. Lulu B waiting for guidance. I can say off this dump right now, I don't think the market's gonna particularly care of the guidance. But the only thing that that guidance would do would probably play into the factor of me saying playing for the little bit of a bounce factor in terms of your upside. Yeah, it could take it back up towards about 341 if the guidance is particularly better than expected. But it's this is pretty much dead in the water. There's nothing here to pretty much look at. Right, so 341 is your upside if you were to get any further kind of bounce out of this. But downside levels, I still have in play are still 324, 311, and that is particularly what I will stick with. All right. The other one, someone just dropped the name CJ. You mentioned Doc U. I haven't looked at this ticker since oof, it's been an age. All right, you got a little bit of a pop. I gotta say, looking at the weekly though, it looks like it did absolutely nothing to this stock. Just how much it's pretty much bled out. But in terms of continuation, your overhead resistance that I'm looking at is right around this 52 half. There's going to be a question mark if we get there and actually hit the resistance before the opening bell tomorrow. But 52 half is your overhead resistance on this. If you were to see any kind of continuation above 52 half, then that will trade rather quickly up towards 56, and that'll be the next level of resistance, and also smacking towards your weekly 20-day EMA off of this weekly chart here. All right. So upside, like I said, 52 half, above 52 half, you trade up to 56. And then I do not expect this trade beyond that 52 mark. Beyond that 56 mark, I would likely anticipate you get a pullback, a little bit more consolidation before you even get any kind of next leg to the upside. All right. But yeah, 52 half and then 56 to the upside. In terms of support, as you kind of see, it's kind of teetering here. I can see this retrace down as low as 46. So I would be cautious about that, and that also would be potentially your buy the dip type of opportunity if you do get regression. Watch to see if this can hold 46, and you use that as your entry point tomorrow if it's going to end up being a 0 day for you. All right, let's see what else there is to take a look at. A Lobo cost looks to be flushing on ER. Costco also has earnings today. I did not know that. I think I actually had this charted out. Yes, I did actually. So off of the weekly here with Costco, you had a beautiful wedge setting up. I was looking at for this to come down towards the support. Also confluence with the 100-day EMA sitting down towards that 465 mark. Do I believe that we can trade down there? It is possible. I am not very pretty much decisive on the fact that Costco is going to stay down though, particularly as of right now. I think that earnings call is likely going to be more decisive in terms of the directional path for Costco. So being only down about $2 for a near $500 stock, I don't think it's particularly flushing more so. So it does look like we need to hear a little bit more out of that conference call to get a little bit more of a direction. But you are sandwiched between that 50-day EMA to the upside. If we do see this pop, particularly, your upside you could particularly play out towards going into next week is 498. But downside, I do believe, is actually weighed more heavily. And so I would particularly favor the fact that it is going to break down. It is going to break this wedge to the downside and you look for the flush below that 100-day EMA, below 465.89, this should end up trading down, and I believe you take this down towards about 442 is what I'm looking at for your relative support to play continuation on the downside. All right, so 465 cracks down, then we look to trade this down to 442. That would ultimately be my game plan. If you were to see any kind of bounce, we see any reflective move back to the upside here, as it's sitting about a what near 0.5% in the red. I will look to for this to retest that 50-day EMA off of the weekly at that 498 spot as we potentially get a nice little bounce. If it does get a nice guidance, maybe, then that'll be the opportunity to short at that given spot. All right. But I would favor the downside. Break below 465, you trade down to 442, and that's as simple as I can say it. All right. Let's see. As I actually go back to SPY, obviously everyone is pretty much on the table with PPI day tomorrow. I gotta say, this is actually one of the moments where I see so many indecisive type of directional movement for SPY in terms of the forecast. There are so many people, especially on Twitter, on FinTwit, so many different mixed kind of directions in terms of the market. And when I say mixed directions, that basically we're at pretty much decipher whether we're going to have a Christmas rally as we lean into the Feds next week, or are we actually just going to fall off a cliff? So many different directions in which everyone is actually kind of contemplating right now. That's pretty much the biggest question mark. I've seen, I believe, as of right now, if I'm not mistaken, just going off of what Avery has actually kind of gave us projection wise, he's looking out towards 402 and then basically expecting us to regress once we tap into 402. That is very plausible. I think that's also retesting towards that weekly 100-day EMA in which we can extend up towards that 402. And then we regress to basically make a lower weekly high, right? As you see, since our peak from the week of Thanksgiving, we've have basically regressed and making a lower high. So it would be plausible the fact that if we end up smacking 402, we make a lower high since the week of Thanksgiving, and that would set us up for a reversal back to the downside. More so as we got a little bit of a pump today. All right. So the 402 is very plausible to me. I am in the camp in which I'm more so in case of saying level by level, right? If I see us actually break over 403, then I will go long and I will particularly be bullish. Until I see us break over 403, I am in the camp that, yeah, even if we get up to the 402 as Avery's expecting, I am with him, in which case we would end up breaking down and potentially making a lower low as we have here these past 2 weeks since Thanksgiving. All right. So that's just my mindset. Obviously, we're likely going to get that decisive moment going into FOMC next week with the Feds. Until now, it's more so feeling like, yeah, you're taking a gamble on your projection in terms of just saying, you know what, I believe the market's going to go down and we're going to end up breaking down. and I'm gonna ride it through FOMC. That's pretty much not ideally the way that you want to necessarily go about it, especially if you're going into next week expiration, in which you're not gonna buy yourself much time to really pretty much recover those losses if it does not go in your favor, and that's something that I would go against. If you are gonna get a early directional move ahead of the Fed's next week, my best bet would say to at least get yourself 2 week expiration, and that way, if anything, you can pretty much gauge yourself to particularly look to recover or recoup some of your losses on any kind of reflexive bounce. All right. But as it sits right now, and I think I've been saying it kind of like repetitive these past few days here, but we have been smacked between the 20-day EMA as support. I've been talking about that 390 support as we kind of pushed into it yesterday. And then also talking about the upside, in which we have the 50-day EMA on the weekly here for SPY being our upside towards that 403 mark. So either we break north of 403, we continue to see a newer high break over the 410 mark, and we'll start to talk about that 416, 418 that I think has been on historical roadmaps or historical forecast for a lot of traders around the markets, or we break down below that 392 on that 20 EMA and we start to pretty much regress. All right. I think it's as simple as that in terms of just looking at forecasts. But right now, going into tomorrow, do I expect us to get more of a bounce? Yes, I do. I do think that we could particularly trade up to the 402. And it just depends how aggressively and how fast, rather, we can get there. And it would not even shock me if we actually got there tomorrow on the back end of CPI data, in which we see a broader market rally. Pretty much how we saw today, but just more participation. All right. Kind of giving you a little bit of a glance back in terms of how I was pretty much looking at the market this morning. First thing that I did actually notice was a little bit of a flip of the scenario, right? I was talking about yesterday about Apple actually starting to show relative weakness. Well, that was not the case this morning. We actually did see Apple starting to push into the green here this morning. What actually was continuing to be the relative weakness yet again was Tesla. That was the most glaring weakness as it pretty much pushed down about $4 at one point in the morning. That was actually where your weakness is. And so looking at Tesla breaking down and then looking at Apple trying to push into the green, that pretty much offset itself for me this morning. But what was going to more so give me that more decisive direction for the market as we saw it start to push eventually was looking at Microsoft. Microsoft to me was the biggest directional mover for me. Once I started to see Microsoft starting to gain momentum, starting to push over 245, that's where I started to say, okay, if Apple's going to hold up, we're going to start to see Microsoft build momentum. Is not going to be much downside that we're looking at in terms of Tesla just weighing us down at whatever given point it was down about three to $4. And then the other thing to follow that up was also looking at towards your pretty much your more lesser degree names, looking at the Amazon, looking at Meta, and then of course looking at Nvidia for the semis. That definitely gave me that motivation to say, all right, market should end up particularly at least holding up more so than bleeding out despite the price action for Tesla. All right. So that's just giving you in terms of where I usually say look for your relative strength, look for your relative weakness. I think we had a lot more relative strength on the board despite looking at a name like a Tesla. All right. So that's just giving you a little bit of a decisive kind of landscape as I was looking at the market from a whole this morning. All right. Now, other than that, there's not too much else to pretty much go into. I mean, obviously, going into tomorrow, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty over the night here as we go into tomorrow. And you could likely end up flipping a coin in terms of how many people are going to say they're bearish tomorrow and how many people are going to say they're bullish tomorrow with PPI data. All right. By the way, Annette, good afternoon. Alobo, double miss. Oof, people don't need so much toilet paper anymore. Actually, I do need to go buy some toilet paper. Let me actually take a glance back at it. I mean, I did say that I favor the downside, even though I don't get why it's actually showing that it's still holding up right now. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna look at it on TOS. Why is TradingView actually stuck? Is my actual question right now. But I'm gonna look at it on TOS. Let me see if I can take a look at it. Cause it's definitely not showing that it's actually dumped. All right, so yeah, it has not done much on my end. I do see it's actually regressed about $1 now. Alobo, I actually thought with that double miss, it actually was bleeding out. It's not bleeding out just yet. I personally believe as long as it holds 465.89, that 100-day EMA, I don't believe you're gonna particularly see a breakdown below the wedge. You could probably see a little bit of a flash breakdown. But you need to see the follow through below 465 for this to break down, as I was pretty much anticipating this trading down towards 442. All right, but that's pretty much. There's not too much there just yet. I do see the regression starting to build up here, as it's down now a percent. But 465, that's the line in the sand. I think that's the level you pretty much keep an eye on tomorrow and see how much it presses into that. Or more so, if we end up getting any kind of particular bounce going into tomorrow, I will say the key level to get an early entry more so in terms of put entries tomorrow, if you're looking for that 0 day, look for this to retest about 480 and a quarter. 480 and a quarter, 480.25 ish. You look to enter on puts, and then you could trade it down into this little bit after hours low, depending how it is going into tomorrow morning. Is obviously going to be a little bit more of a different scenario if we see a different landscape. All right. Let's see what else. I don't think there's much else that's on the radar for me, to be honest with you. That's what I was mentioning. Tomorrow's going to be a very much of a wild card day. I think we're going to see a little bit of a bigger swing than we anticipate tomorrow. And when I say swing, is that we can see the market gap up pretty aggressively tomorrow, in which we have a single day rally to pretty much piggyback off of today's price action. And then next week, going into the Feds, with the market being pretty much scooped, then we'll end up getting a breakdown going into the next week. So that's pretty much what I'm looking at. Not else that's on the radar or on the watches particularly. I do believe that by morning we're gonna see a lot of levels pretty much different than what we're looking at right now. Is what my bigger concern is, trying to give you any analysis from what current levels are right now. All right. But I think I will make today's afternoon session a little brief here. I think we will pretty much conclude with this. Other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow, and hopefully we have some nice 0 days on deck tomorrow. And maybe it actually is another nice green day tomorrow, in which it'll be a lot much easier for a lot of you to pretty much get some scalps, some 0 days in to close out the week on a good note. All right. But I will conclude there. You guys all have a great afternoon, and I will see you guys. Lobo RXDX. I'm gonna take a look at it real quick before I wrap up, as I was literally about to sign off. What in the absolute hell is this? Lobo, what am I looking at? What kind of candle is this? What did they have? Okay, it's biotech, so they definitely had some kind of news. What? That is an absolute ridiculous candle. Are you serious? There's not even any levels to go off of this. This is absolutely just parabolic. You do know that, right? And I could actually tell that the fact that you're probably laughing having me look at this ticker right now. But there is nothing to look at with this ticker at all off of this monthly chart, because this is absolutely parabolic. You'd probably have to pull out some really crazy entire fibs to really look at this. But just looking at this chart, I do see resistance sitting at 124 is what I'm looking at. So keep that in mind. Take that with a grain of salt. But 124 is your resistance to keep in watch on for this for tomorrow. But yeah, I'm not definitely not a name that I'm gonna end up chasing. All right. But 124, look for that to be your resistance on this tomorrow, Lobo. And I think that you should put out all your money, take your profits while it's damn near quadrupled from where it was. You take the money and you run. All right. But other than that, like I said, I will sign off from you guys today. You guys all have a great afternoon. Get some relaxing in, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Later.